In this video session, we want to talk about the possibility of using ePortfolios to measure performance or program assessment. Now, most people will equate ePortfolios to a sample of work, and that's actually pretty accurate. However, in academics, we go a step further. What an academic ePortfolio allows is it allows for students to take their interrelated experiences with academics, community service, extracurricular activities, and any career-related experience, which to many students may seem like this jumbled set of memories, events, or experiences that have no meaning, but to take all those and reflect upon them through what are called artifacts. These artifacts are then sorted according to either course, program, or college objectives, which can then be placed into a type of portfolio system and then uploaded to the internet to be displayed on the web for all to see. Now, who would be interested in looking at such an ePortfolio? Well, first of all, their teacher. An ePortfolio can demonstrate that the student understands and can implement the course content that they have learned. For their advisor, they can demonstrate that they have met the objectives of the program. And of course, for a future employer, they can demonstrate that they have the skills needed to do the job. And the key word here is demonstrate. More than just a resume that states, here's what I have learned, what I know, or what I can do, they can now showcase that. So if you're wanting to do an ePortfolio, what kinds of things should you have in it? According to ePortfolio for All, you could use a general structure that might include the following 4 items. The first thing you may have students put inside their ePortfolio is their profile. This is a student's biography, values, philosophy, beliefs, interests, hobbies, etc. It's similar to an About Me page on a website. Now, keep in mind, if you are using an ePortfolio for a professional purpose, make sure that they understand what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to list inside that biography. You can then also have a summary. This can be a summary or a reflection about a particular course or program, talking about that program or course's purpose, what the student has achieved in that course or program, what they have learned, the challenges that they have faced, as well as how they overcame them, and how that course or program fits into their overall larger plans in life. You then have a showcase of their work. This will obviously showcase work that is matched to the specific learning objectives for the course or program, or even a college's QEP. The artifacts presented by students in this section are the evidence of their ability to meet those standards that have been set for them. Now, keep in mind, when you're using this type of system and showcasing items, projects, artifacts, this is a different means of assessment for completion. We're looking at a performance-based system here. You're looking at the work that they have created as opposed to just a score on a written exam. And of course, you finally have the qualifications. This can be similar to a resume in that it lists out their skills that they have learned while in your program. For example, if it's a computer course, what new technology have they been exposed to? What new type of software can they now use? Maybe perhaps their achievements, or even their service learning contributions. What about their participation in any professional organization? This type of system is a very general ePortfolio, but it may be something that you want to look into. Now, a different type of model comes from the University of Washington for their engineering school. Their students begin their ePortfolios with a professional statement. Describe what makes you stand out as X. I guess if it's an engineering school, perhaps a certain type of engineer. What makes you stand out as this kind of engineer? They then will choose 5 artifacts that will serve as evidence that then support that professional statement. Here is why I am this type of engineer. This is why I'm going to be good as this type of engineer. Look at my work. But it's not just a showcase of what they have done. They must also complete annotations or arguments that say, here is why this evidence supports this statement. They have to reflect upon the work they have done to make sure that it is meeting that professional statement. And a lot of times when it comes to portfolios, we want to place a lot of emphasis on just that showcase of work. What we really want to look for is that reflection, that argument. What a reflection will do is it will help a student to think about what they're doing and to evaluate their own work in relation to what they have been taught. Now, as instructors, you and I reflect about our teaching and our lesson plans if we're to continue to be effective. We reflect about things like the pertinence of our assignments, our readings, or even our courses inside of an overall program in order to create a more solid experience for our students. Now, having students reflect upon those same experiences, those same lessons, those same projects, helps us to make sure that they are mentally getting it. That they can take all these different things, a reading, a video, a field trip, and they can synthesize this information or synthesize this experience and see how it fits into this particular project they are creating. And again, these reflections are vital to an ePortfolio, because what we don't want is what this statement shows here. Without a central focus on reflection, ePortfolios are in danger of becoming simply a collection of information rather than a mechanism for the development of meaningful knowledge. We want more than that inside of our portfolio. A lot of companies will be more interested in perhaps their showcase, but what you and I need to see in order to truly assess they are understanding the information, we're looking to that reflection to see how they are thinking, what they are thinking, and why they are thinking that. And when you really think about an ePortfolio in this type of way, what students are doing is they are analyzing the work that they have created as to why and how it meets those objectives that have been stated, whether it's for the course or for the overall program or by the college. They then must evaluate out of all the projects that they have created over the course of that program, which one of these best meets the objectives that have been stated. And what's really nice about using an ePortfolio or a performance-based system is that you're moving beyond test and you're having students create something. Take the knowledge that they have learned and create artifacts out of that. And when you look at these three words, those are the top 3 higher levels of learning for Bloom's taxonomy. Now, what type of artifacts can students create for an ePortfolio system? Well, this will probably depend upon your course or your program outcomes, but generally artifacts can be things such as a collection of papers, blogs, journals, research, things that they've done inside your class that demonstrate that they know how to communicate through a written assignment. They can also be images, photos of their experience, photos that they've created, photos of travels, of field trips. They can be a collage of, here's my class represented inside this collage. They can be audio recordings. Perhaps you're making them do a presentation, have them do a lecture, create an audiobook, an audio journal. It can also be a video. A lot of times, many courses have students create PowerPoint presentations, and why not have them create a video clip of that presentation, similar to what you are listening to right now? Why not have them create a digital story? Why not a video journal? Some nursing schools have students create a video journal that talks about their experiences at the clinical. So these are just variations of things that you can do. This is an example of a portfolio artifact that I created back in 2003 for my alternative teaching certificate. Now, we were asked to do a PowerPoint of one of the chapters inside of a book. Mine was the cycle of reflection. But instead of doing a PowerPoint, you can call me a rebel, I decided to make a 12-minute video that was sort of a 1950s style about the cycle of reflection. It had a huge impact inside the class, and it's a video that they kept using well after I was gone. And it was a lot of fun to create, but it was an alternative to the standard either write a paper or do a PowerPoint. So this could be something that you try to implement. I'm only going to play a portion of it for you, but hopefully you'll enjoy it.
The classroom, daily occupied by students with eager minds ready to be filled with the vastness of knowledge that you as a teacher hold. And while you as a teacher would always like things to go well in your class, sometimes that won't be the case. Let's join Mr. Bumblemeyer halfway through his 2-hour 4th period class, and let's see how he is doing. Uh-oh, the class doesn't look like it seems to be going very well. Little Billy has an ice pack on his head. Some of the students are writing, but they appear nervous or anxious. And Betty seems to be crying. And Johnny? Well, Johnny seems to be more interested in his hair. Let's find Mr. Bumblemeyer and see if we can find out what's wrong. What's the matter, Mr. Bumblemeyer? Are you having a rough day? It's the class.
Well, anyway, I'll stop right there, and I'll send you out the link. You're more than happy to take a look at it. But what I wanted to demonstrate is that this is a different type of artifact to think about for an ePortfolio. An ePortfolio can take advantage of a lot of the tools for Web 2.0, things like video, audio, even interactive content. And so what can you do to challenge your students to come up with something that demonstrates the knowledge inside your course? So let's take a look at a few portfolios that have actually been created. These first two will come from Clemson University, and the last one is one that I did for grad school. So let's go and take a look. This first one is for Clemson University, and it was created using Google Sites. Just so you can kind of see what it looks like, very clean. And of course, they're able to create links on the side that maybe actually be linked up to those 4 general categories, or to be honest, they could be based upon those objectives inside your class. However you decide to set it up. Okay, let's go back. So kind of general, nice looking. This next one though, Chelsea Sugars, I really like this one. This was done using a website called Wix. And let's go and take a look at it real quick, just kind of show you how this one's done. Let me see if I can scroll this up just a bit more. So she's got an About Me section. She has something about her academics, her reflections about it. And I really like this. Watch when you click over here. Nice, where it's at, her grade point average, general ePortfolio, some of the honors and awards that she's got. So again, some really nice stuff. And again, different categories, and this will be based upon what your program or your course decides. Career, gallery, perhaps of her photos and so forth. But anyway, just kind of show you an example. Now, this is one that I did back in grad school, not nearly as fancy as Chelsea's, but just kind of show you again some of the same material that was presented. This first portion, a little bit of biography about myself. We were asked to do a reflection letter about our experience inside the technology program, so that's what I did. Kind of a lengthy process. We also had a set of course objectives, which we had to list out. This is all of them. All these 6, well, I don't know, it's more than 6, but anyway, you kind of see where they fall underneath. Leadership, design, development, and then they're sort of broken down into 3 different areas. And then I had to go through and show how my work met these objectives. Those are the courses that I took, with links to also some of the projects that I did in some of those classes. And then, of course, the artifacts. We had to choose specific artifacts to go through for each one. And what we had to do was to create a brief reflection, not only here, but actually the artifact report. Artifact report, again, project description about it, the responsibility, here's the objective, here's the reflection. Here's why I'm basically justifying that or arguing that my evidence meets this particular responsibility objective. So again, it was a very thorough process as far as the work that was created. And of course, with the artifact, I also have a link out to the specific project. So anyway, it's a really nice system, and boy, I tell you what, it really made me think a lot about the work that I had created. And again, that's what it should be, is that deeper level of thinking. It's not just about the work that's done, but it's about the process that got you there. There's that old saying that joy is not necessarily in the destination, but it's inside the journey. And that's really what you and I are looking for as instructors, is to make sure that when we look at these reflections, students are progressing in how they synthesize information. We're not just trying to get students to pass a class, we're trying to create lifelong learners. We want them to be successful at their career. How do we move them to that deeper level of thinking? And ePortfolios can help us with that by moving to something that's more of a performance-based system as opposed to just normal test. So those were a few examples of what some ePortfolios look like. But who's actually using them? Here's just a few of the schools that are implementing them in some way, form, or fashion. And I won't go through all these, but some of them are using them only for specific courses. Others are using them for programs, and some are actually using it for the entire school. Virginia Tech, LaGuardia Community College, and Clemson University are all using it on a school-wide basis. Clemson, in fact, has now made it a requirement for all undergraduate students to have an ePortfolio for their general ed. And so they create these assignments and they're evaluated. And one of the links I put up on the website for you talks about that experience. The University of South Carolina Upstate, I know that they have an ePortfolio for their education department. But these are just a few of the schools that are implementing it, moving from just a test-based assessment to something that is more performance-based. And ePortfolios help with that. So what type of tools are they using? Now this just represents some of the tools schools are using. Some do have their own systems that they wrote. For example, Virginia Tech is one that they wrote. Others use what come with the LMS. For example, you see Desire to Learn ePortfolio on there. Don't get too excited. That is a separate package for Desire to Learn. That is something that we would have to purchase as a school. The same thing with Digication. These are really meant to be implemented on a school-wide basis, not just for one individual class. There are other alternatives, if that's what we'll be taking a look at. So the first one on the list that I wanted to show you was Weebly. Weebly has a very nice drag and drop system. Now, a lot of these will be free to a degree. Free meaning that you can use it, but they will only allow you so much interactivity or so much internet space, and that's something that you want to have students look into. Now, Weebly, I have to say, I'm very impressed with. I love the way that it works. I love some of the samples that I've seen, and it's a drag and drop website builder. So if you have students who are not very fluent in HTML, well, that's actually okay, because they provide you the tools that make it a little bit easier for you. Now, when it comes to cost, they offer a free site, but again, it's going to be perhaps limited as to how much you can put on it. I don't know for sure. I did happen to come across another site that mentioned Weebly, and I believe they said it was like $5 a month, or if you did it on an annual basis, it dropped it down to $3 or $4 a month, and if you did it for 2 or 3 years, it dropped the price even down to $2 a month. Now, just to kind of mention this real quick, the advantage of having something like this where students are more responsible for it is the fact that once they are done with your program, they already have a website set up in place so that when they leave the school, it can go with them. Some of the other universities that have their own proprietary system, once the student is done, that's it. Some of them will allow students to continue to access that ePortfolio, but it's really nice if it can be given back to students and let them use it as they see fit. And so some of these that I'm showing you, for example, Weebly helps support that. Wix is another one. You saw a demonstration of Wix with, I think it was Chelsea's, the one that had the little page flipping inside of it. Again, you can get a website, you can start it up for free, and they've got some fabulous templates and so forth to get started. Again, if you want to upgrade the amount of storage that you have or upgrade the amount of things that you can do, you can always pay for that. But a lot of them do have a starter package which can be free. It's a great way to get students started in on it. Google Sites is free. Some of the ones that we already took a look at from Clemson University, the first one we did was designed inside Google Sites. You just have to have a Google account. You have PebblePad. This comes out of the UK. WordPress, they provide you with templates, a lot of fantastic templates, but you do have to know a little bit about what you're doing, and you do have to have a place that'll actually host it. PBWorks, this is a wiki site. Similar to Wikispaces, a fantastic site. There was a nursing program that was starting to use it before they moved to Google Sites, but it is one that you can go through and create just a very small, type of website. It'll support up 2 gigs of information, which is fairly well. Some people will even use a blog space as a way to create an assessment. Again, it's going to depend upon what you're wanting to do with your program, what types of artifacts you're wanting to have students create. We'll talk about that in just a second. Squarespace was another one that was recommended, and they do have some free areas. And one of the things you want to take a look at is when you go to these sites, take a look for their section if they have it called, well, first thing I look at is the examples to kind of see what's been done, and then I'll take a look at the pricing. This video may be outdated depending on when you view it, but here, personal, $12 a month. That's actually not too bad. So again, if it's something you want to take a look at, if price is a big thing, you definitely want to think about that for your students. And then, of course, I did want to mention this one. This was sent to me by someone, Personal Pathways by South Carolina. South Carolina will actually let students create an ePortfolio that they can use to give off to employers. It's pretty limited as to what it can do, but it can have some files uploaded to it. But again, it's a free account, and so it's one that I would highly recommend you do have students do as a means for when they get ready to move from the school to employment. So some really cool stuff. But I do want to go back to the presentation to finish it out by talking about some things to consider. Now, whenever you're looking at some of these tools that we just demonstrated, some things that you want to think about. What is the purpose of the ePortfolio for the student? Is it personal, academic, professional? Because this will help you decide what types of tools you need to look into, as well as the type of artifacts you want to think about. With that stated, what types of things do you want students to create to demonstrate that they have acquired the knowledge inside your class to move on? What types of evidence are you wanting them to create to help support whatever professional statement perhaps you're having them make? How easy is it to use the tool that you're looking at? Obviously, for most folks, if you're not in a highly technical program, you want to try to find the easiest tool for many people to get involved with. Because a lot of the stuff that I looked at when it came to research, the harder the tool, the less inclined students are to get involved with it. The more difficult it is, it makes it more difficult for them to actually see value in it. It usually ends up with more frustration. So try to find an ePortfolio system that's a little bit easier to use. Also try to find an ePortfolio system that's flexible. You don't want one that's very rigid in design. One of the complaints I saw about Virginia Tech's was that students had very limited ability to be able to modify it to help create an ePortfolio that they thought represented them better. They felt they were being forced into a box. Try to move something beyond very rigid and something that will give students the ability to express themselves, still keeping it professional, but to kind of give them a little bit of variation. Because every student has their own identity. Every student is unique. Finding an ePortfolio system that will help them express that can make it a little bit easier and also help get them more involved. Depending on the types of artifacts that you're going to have students create, whether it's video, audio, images, and so forth, make sure that whatever portfolio system you're looking at supports those files. It makes it very difficult for a student if you tell them, we want you to create a video, but they can't upload it because that particular portfolio system does not support it. And then, of course, accessibility. Some students will want to keep their portfolios private as opposed to public. Perhaps look into a system that will support that. In other words, it doesn't go public until the student says it goes public. And then, of course, tech support. Whatever system you use, you want to make sure that there are tutorials available, that someone is there to help them get through it if they have an issue. And I highly recommend that whatever system you pick out for your students, you create an ePortfolio for yourself. That way you get experience with it. What's frustrating you more than likely is going to frustrate them. That is just a good way of you sort of testing it before students do. And then, of course, a few other things to consider is, number one, if you're going to be implementing an ePortfolio, do it early. This works very well, and probably more so with programs than just individual classes. If you're going to implement an ePortfolio, you need to get students exposed to it early on inside the system. This way they have time to work with the actual tool. And what's nice about when you implement it on a program basis is in those first classes, they get exposed to it and they start using it. They may not be masters of it yet, but by the time they graduate, perhaps they will be. And so they'll have these very polished portfolios as if you just sort of throw it off until the end, where students have hardly any time to play with the tools and to get to know them at a professional level. You also need to consider building up the value of the ePortfolio in order to help students be more motivated in using it. If you're inside of a workforce program, it's a little bit easier to build up the ePortfolio by telling your students that there are employers that actually go out and look at these. As opposed to just having a resume, it helps employers to actually see what you can do or to see what you have done, as opposed to just read about those skills. If they have that little link, they can instantly go see some of your work and perhaps move you to the front of the line. It also helps if you know of certain companies that are doing it inside the fields that you're teaching. Some of the cool things I'm seeing in nursing programs at other universities is they're actually having students create videos on how to do some of these assessments, or like a head-to-toe assessment or drawing blood, that sort of demonstrate their knowledge. And that could be something that an employer at a hospital could see and say, wow, I really like the way that they interact with the patient. I want to bring this person in for an interview, as opposed to just reading about it on a resume. You also need to teach them self-reflection. For a lot of students, this can be one of the hardest things to do, other than building the artifacts. That can be the easy part. But having them go through and justify saying, this is why this piece is important. This is what I learned from this piece. Through this process, this is how I've changed. It can be very difficult because, to be honest, this is a new way of thinking for a lot of our students. A lot of them don't go back over that self-reflection. How many teachers don't actually go through and reflect about their own teaching methods? And so this is definitely something that you need to teach to students if you want them to be successful at this. What I really liked about one of the schools that I read about, and I think it was the one with the engineering model, they actually have what's called Studio Portfolio. They have 5 portfolio sessions. They're 2-hour sessions, and a student comes through, and what they do is they help students write those professional statements, they help students select artifacts, and they help students reflect about those artifacts, to argue those things. And it's done usually with their peers. And so if you're going to implement an ePortfolio early on, you need to start teaching these students how to self-reflect early, so that by the time they get to the end of their program, they've become more proficient at it. Will they grumble about it? Oh, more than likely. It's more work, but it's important work. And so this will help them become deeper thinkers and better learners. You also need to make sure that you have faculty buy-in. If you do not have faculty who see any value inside the ePortfolio, that negativity will end up creeping down to the students. Several of the papers that I read said that this was a huge thing for them. When students were complaining about the value, a lot of it could be traced back to faculty who also did not see the value in it. And so try to get your faculty involved and get them to buy into it. The more enthusiastic and supportive faculty are of using it, the easier it'll be for students to get involved with it. And then, of course, don't forget faculty training. It's not enough that you know how to use it. If you have adjuncts who are going to be using it, other full-time faculty, you want to make sure that all of them are proficient in being able to use that technology. And of course, the last thing you want to do is provide samples that students can see of the work that you are wanting them to create, of what a good ePortfolio looks like. That way they have something to use as a reference, as a tool by which they can compare their own work to, and perhaps even strive to be better than. So make sure you have those samples ready for them. And so that's it for this presentation on ePortfolios. I hope you learned something new, or at least it got you to thinking about how to use this performance-based assessment as a means for your program or your course. And if it's something that you want to implement, contact me, because what we'll do is we'll take a look at your course objectives or your program's objectives, figure out which artifacts would best demonstrate those objectives, and then we'll look for the best tool that supports the type of projects you're wanting them to create. So definitely give me a call, and I hope you enjoyed it.